Welcome back, Inebri-art. This is Andy, your host as always. And I'm back on Zoom this week. I know last week we were recording live in our studio, but today we're joined by Jim Fairchild. Welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me, Andy. How's it going?
Not bad. So I was actually checking out you Small Isles is your band, and you have a new album that dropped Friday. And
Yeah, last Friday.
yeah,
It dropped very
everything
quickly.
everything on memory, correct? That's the name. Did I lose you?
Oh, there you are. There you are.
Oh, sorry. Everything on Memory is the name of the album. And I was checking it out, and I mean, you're known for your time with Modest Mouse and other bands, but this seems very different than what I was expecting. Is this how would you
Thank
let's start
you.
with how would you describe the music? It seemed very atmospheric to me.
Man, the way that I think of this music is I've always been really into film scores. And so
Oh,
I think
okay.
of all three of the Small Isles releases so far as imagined scores for imaginary films. And so, like at the core of it, I've I have not basically I've imagined some movie that I want to exist or that appeared in a dream or something like that. It seems cool to me,
Hmm.
and then I start the process of scoring that movie. Like what would the sort of themes of the audio themes of this be, and what would it look like? I kind of have like abstract versions of what it would look like in my head, and then I start responding with, okay, how could I push that forward? And in this particular case, so the first one was I was imagining is kind of like Rick Moody had written an updated version of the Ice Storm,
Yep.
which he wrote the original book, and then Ang Lee directed that movie. And I was imagining that Rick Moody had written an updated Ice Storm set in California, like in kind of 2020, and it was before that when I was writing it, but around that time, and then Ang Lee had directed it, but they had which is who directed the Ice Storm, but then that they had collaborated more, so like they basically said, okay, we're making this movie together. That was the first record. The second one was imagining this kind of like coming of age story in San Francisco,
Hmm.
um, with like these disparate youths, kids from all over the map, from different like social spheres and economic spheres and all these different things. And that was the second EP, which was one that came out earlier this year called Out in the Sunset. And then the one that just came out, I was imagining that, and this actually did come in a dream. I, I thought Atlanta was like the best show maybe ever made. I don't know, but
What show?
I
Sorry.
really love Atlanta,
Okay.
the Donald Glover
Uh,
show.
oh,
And
okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so for whatever reason, I had this dream that Donald and Stephen Glover had written a movie which was a response to the lyric that Isaac, my friend Isaac, wrote from Modest Mouse to the Modest Mouse song Third Planet. Um, and then Christopher Nolan directed it. This happened in a dream. And it was right when I was first starting to put together the initial ideas for this EP. And I was like, fuck, that sounds like a cool movie to score. So I set about scoring it.
Do dreams influence your music a lot? I mean, I very rarely remember my dreams. It's usually if I am, it's usually a really stressful time, and my dreams are just absurd nonsense. But do you get a lot of influence for your music from dreams?
I don't think I usually do, but in this case, it was just like, fuck, that's too good to pass up, you know? Like, so I gotta do something with that. I mean, I think it's possible that it does, you know what I mean? Especially with music like this, where you're not kind of bound in, because like there's that classic thing where if you wake up and you're like, oh, I had this crazy dream, and it's like this magical fucking smorgasbord of whatever sort of bullshit in your conscious and subconscious mind.
Hmm.
It's super interesting to you, and then you start telling people about it. You're like, then there was a stop sign and a pine tree and a whale, and they all combine forces to create a carousel. And your friends are just like, oh, okay, dude. Like I
Yeah.
get, who
And it's
cares?
like trying to explain that, like, okay, it was the house I grew up in, but not actually the house I grew up in. That
Exactly,
kind of,
exactly. So there's these embedded apologies also and all that stuff. So
yeah.
um with so I think that if I tried to like, maybe some people would have more success in like putting that into lyrical form. I certainly never have when I've done lyrical music, but I think with this kind of music, maybe that sort of like subconscious dream state, the kind of reflexive thing. Because you know how in dreams where it's like whatever you're the house that you grew up in appears, but then it tumbles into like the Empire State Building or whatever. But in your dream they have like a direct relationship or something that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, like that doesn't work as well probably in lyrical music, but that sort of thinking may work a little bit better, or maybe I'm just fooling myself, but may work a little bit better with this type of music. You know what I mean? Because it's like the other part of Small Isles that I'm really into is that I don't I don't want to tell anybody anything at
Yeah.
this point in my life. I feel like we're all told so much, like we're all plugged into everything and we get moment to moment fucking color commentary on the political scene, our favorite musicians and celebrities and whatever.
Hmm.
And
And number four is going to
I don't know.
surprise you.
Yeah, I just don't fucking care about that stuff anymore. Like I
Yeah.
just don't want to hear about I don't want to hear what anybody thinks really anymore. I want to like that's not true, you know what I mean? I care, but it's just like you understand what I'm saying.
No, I
I don't want to be
do. Yeah.
didactic in my approach. I just like there are obviously like with this type of music because of the types of sounds that I might be using or we might be using or the chord sequences and things like that. You're implying stuff, but I just don't want to tell anybody anything. Because
Hmm.
also, like now that I'm older and I have a son and stuff, it's like I know a lot. That's I can hold that in one hand. The other hand, I don't fucking know anything.
Yeah.
So I, I start to really like distrust this idea of people speaking from a position of authority, which is not to say that people shouldn't make songs anymore. And I still listen to like narrative music all the time, but I just don't feel like I'm in a good position to tell people anything, but I can suggest things.
And it's gotta, I remember when my son was probably roughly your son's age, um, they were starting to learn things when you're not around.
Yeah,
And
dude,
I
that's
remember
crazy.
my son walked in the room one day. He's like, Daddy, I hurt my scapula. And I'm like, Are you okay? He's like, Yeah, I'm fine. And then he left the room and I had to call my friend and be like, Bro, what's the scapula? He's like, It's your shoulder blade. I'm like, Oh, okay. And
uh,
it's, yeah, I totally get what you mean though, that like you don't, like, you want to hear what's important to the people who are important to you, but like just Joe Schmo's venting about whatever like irritates them. You're just like, yeah, I don't care, man. Like,
yeah, there you go, dude. There you
yeah,
go. Like, yeah, exactly. That's a good way of saying it. Like, man, I got gallons full of uh, sources of optimism and sources of potential hostility. I don't give a shit, man. I want to have a nice night with my wife, my kid, my dogs, my friends.
yeah,
Like, I don't know,
yeah,
dude.
no, exactly. And it's like to me, that's like what's the most important part. And I mean, especially now, like we're literally a week away from Christmas. I'm not sure if you're a Christmas celebrator or have some other thing, but it's just, yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
we're
just
we're
everyone is
we're we're,
so,
we're celebrants.
yeah, everyone's so cranky and just up in arms about the dumbest things. I'm like, if that's the biggest worry you have, I'm just not, it doesn't even affect me. Like, whatever.
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
Um,
exactly. So that's what Small Isles is like I want people basically like we played our first live show a few weeks ago. And what I told people is like these were all, imagined scores for imaginary films, blah blah blah. But I just want you to be able to like wherever this music takes you, just close your eyes. That my only suggestion is close your eyes
mhm.
and make yourself the main character in this movie. And that's it, like that's what I want it to be. So
I was going to ask you if you play it live because I was very curious. Is it more like a coffee house kind of vibe or?
I do want to play it live. I mean, I
Yeah,
want it to be arena rock without the rock,
yeah.
like I want to, I guess there is some rock in there, but that's what I want it to be is like, I want it to be big, moving music. Um, we played, there was a small string section, there was a small choir.
Hmm.
There were three of us playing guitar. Um, my friend was playing bass, my friend Keith. This woman Debbie was like this amazing piano player. Like in that world, and it's sort of like I'm not a trained musician. I mean, I know, I guess, a fair bit about stuff, but these people who are skilled and trained, like I got them all the music and they just came in and they knew it. And it was so rewarding and impressive. And I don't know, it was beautiful, man. And I want to do more of that. So I'm just starting to wrap my head around what the next. There's two more releases, two more records that I have, like the movies in my head that I want to start working on scoring, and that's as I am also scoring one TV show and then also a another film. So
Do
all these
you
things are just like bouncing back and forth on each other.
do you want these to be actually converted into like? Do you want these movies that are in your head to become realistic, like realized, I should
Oh
say?
God, I mean, yeah, I would love that, of course, for sure. Um, I don't know, I know a few actors, but I don't have that direct sort of contact. But I mean, yeah, who am I kidding? Like, if um whatever, like if Ang Lee somehow suggested to somebody like this is actually not a bad idea for a movie, I'd be like, great, well, I'm ready to score it. Let's do it. You know.
it in it's one of I feel like scoring movies and TV is one of those things that so impacts our experience of them, but we tend not to even think about them,
Yeah, I think that's
especially
right. I think
even, based on the movies you're referencing, I don't think you're a big comic book movie guy, but, even just those little moments where they will cross over and then they add that little hint of the previous movies,
oh
soundtrack
yeah, dude.
to,
I mean,
I love that
absolutely.
stuff.
Yeah, all those Easter eggs, all that subconscious, the integration of, maybe not even subconscious but like subtleties that can reference um, past visual experiences. I mean, I love that sort of stuff. And I definitely, you know, my objective is to, you know, have the opportunity to score stuff like that um, at some point, because
Yeah.
I love those big gestures. That's just that's not where you start in this world, obviously. But I've also been really lucky in getting to score anything so far.
Yeah. Is there a particular movie score that like really stands out to you as like the quintessential movie score that like you would kind of put on a
Gosh, there's a lot of
pedestal?
them. I mean, I love, I mean, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly comes to mind immediately.
Oh yeah.
Edward Scissorhands comes to mind immediately. Let me think for a second. I love a lot of the parts of the score. I don't love all of the cues, but I love a lot of Jerry Goldsmith's score to Basic Instinct. I love um, a lot of the cues in Howard Shore's Silence of the Lambs.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I mean, so those come to mind immediately as like, but I mean, I listen to scores like all the time, like, and I have for a long time. Philip Glass's score to The Hours comes to mind.
I don't
Um,
know that one.
yeah, it's pretty amazing. Um, I don't know. I've always loved that music, and when I was thinking about what I wanted like this decade of my life to be, um, it definitely didn't involve touring as much.
Hmm.
Um, and it involved I wanted to make more music than I ever had. And one good way to do that is to be able to establish yourself as a person who's good at scoring movies and TV shows, because then it's like you're the demand is there to create a lot of music, you know. So um
Yeah, and there's
I
so
kind of
much being created now for all the different streaming services, and
yeah,
everybody
that's
wants an
right.
exclusive thing. So I
Yep.
can't imagine they're an
So
easy job to get, but I feel like there's got to be more of them.
yeah, they're definitely not easy to get, and the competition is real. I mean, there's people who are doing such incredible work out there. But like I you try to do a better job than is expected of you, like anything, and dig in and be honest about it. There you go.
But
Hey, you guys. Sorry, my doggies are
oh, I'm like,
growling at
what
the
was
dog next to.
that? What kind of dogs are they?
We have a little Shiba mix,
Yeah.
and then we have a Kai Ken. So we have a little Shiba mix from Taiwan. She's 12 and a half, and then Ash off. And then we have a little Kai Ken who are they're relatives of Shiba, I guess, mountain dogs from from Japan. Ash
Oh no,
off. And that's who we have. Two
that's
little
awesome.
rugrats. I just flew up to Oregon like um 3 months ago, I guess, and picked up the new one. Um and that was an incredibly surreal experience, just like because it's such an intimate relationship with dogs, right? So it's like I flew up there one Saturday morning, and then I meet this dog, and it's like, hey, little dude, who I'm going to spend the next 15 years of my life with. Let's get in the car and drive for 18 hours.
Oh, that's kind of cool. A little bonding.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah. It's I don't know. I'm a total dog person, and I always
Me
have my
too.
cat friends who are like, no, cats are the same. I'm like, they're totally not the same. They're just not, you know.
No, they're absolutely not the same.
Yeah.
I mean, I love animals in general, but I'm definitely a dog dude. Like I'm 100% a dog dude.
Yeah, for sure. To kind of get back a little on topic, when you're trying to get like a scoring gig, like what is that? Is there, I don't know, like an audition, or do you kind of like bring past work, and do you bring these EPs from Small Island? Like how does that process even begin? Like it's not even something I've ever even thought of.
It's actually all those things, like I mean, with Small Isles, the a big part of starting this project was wanting to make this kind of a music, but also knowing that I wanted to get into scoring. It was like, well, I can make the music, and it can be out there as commercial releases, and then I can point to that. I can go, I can do a lot of different things, but if you like this instrumental music,
Hmm.
um, this might give you some suggestion for what I could do for a score for you. So that's definitely a part of the impetus for starting that project. And then now that I have scored some more stuff, being able to make playlists of those cues and play them for people, like these are some other things. Here's some happier stuff, here's some tragic stuff, here's some tense stuff. And then also just like, because it's a very involved process, right? So it's like getting to the point where it's like you're able to communicate with people on like we're doing right now. Like you have to
Hmm.
be able to just like spend time with people and do that sort of translation that's necessary for, because not everybody can speak music, right? So
Oh
they
yeah, for
might be
sure.
saying whatever, like it needs to sound more cloudy, and then you need to know what, or know them well enough to hopefully be able to translate that into something that's musical. It's going to like you know keep the thing rolling and keep it happening in a way that, like as you said, um I mean, it's nice if people could listen to the music and go like, that's great music, but also you don't want to, in most cases, have people watching the movie going, what a great score. They need to like
Yeah, you almost want it
on
to be
sort
kind of just subconscious. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, hopefully if you pulled it out. I mean, there's also the Morricone approach where he was like, no, just make rad music. I do think that's true,
Yeah.
but it's a very interesting puzzle to solve where it's like, oh, I I need to make rad music that's not the only thing that people are thinking about while they're like, you know, ingesting these characters or this narrative. So that's a
So
really fun challenge.
so you mentioned like the idea of like having to make it sound more cloudy, and I've done both work that is collaborative and what I would call art by committee, which I did not.
Mhm.
I really love collaboration. I don't enjoy art by committee. Do you ever get that kind of feeling where you're being noted to death, or does it always feel like more collaborative with the producers and directors and whoever you're working with?
I mean, fortunately, it hasn't felt like noted to death yet. You know, I mean, a few different things come to mind when you say that. Like, yes, that can totally happen. Um, to let me say this: like the me of maybe 10 years ago would be a lot less eager to like embrace that stuff. I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
unwilling to work with people. The work that I had done 10 years ago in that world, I wasn't obstinate, but there was a small part of me that was like, well, I made you some great music and it works. So
Yeah.
that's not that that's the end of it, but that's enough. Now I'm definitely in a place in my life where I'm a lot more like, this is a riddle, and let's figure out all the people who are involved who want to have some agency in helping me solve this riddle, and I'm gonna solve it. You know, so it's like you hope this isn't always the case, but you hope that if there are like network executives involved or produce all these different people, there's any number, there's a whole range of people who might have some agency in the music. You want to be able to be a better translator. I guess I kind of like the more customer service aspect of it
Yeah.
than I used to, you know. And then also, I mean, bands are incredible, you know, like but bands are also very kind of closed off. And movies and TV, by their very nature, there has to be so many people involved with them to get the damn thing to happen, right?
Yeah, for sure.
There's just so much going on that to be in that widely collaborative an environment, especially when it's like people who are really great at what they do. I I love that because there's, I guess, a little bit of like I don't want to say parasitic is not the right word, but there's that part of me that just like is so eager to learn. It's like, what is a producer actually saying when they want this work to go from A to D? You know,
Mm-hmm.
like how did they get this far? Like, what is that process like for them, and how does that facilitate this? And the same with the editor, and the same with the directors. You know, so like, I just I love being a part of that energy. You know, it's super. It's really exciting for me at this point in my life, to I don't know, be a part of that ensemble.
Yeah, I mean, like that's that collaborative nature that I love because you're two people have way more experience than one person can ever have that they can add to the project, and you know, it almost seems to go up exponentially the more the more people that are involved, and if they're the right blend, not everybody works well
Yeah,
together, for sure.
yeah,
Yeah, I was
that's
working on
right.
this public art project, and it was basically a conference room with like nine people and trying to interpret all of their ideas into like one cohesive image. And it was just, it was not an enjoyable experience.
Oh man, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
But, I mean, it's kind of like, just like everything else. I mean, like that is part of my experience now. And it gives me the opportunity when I see that kind of thing going, yeah, I don't know if this is for me, like
Right.
saying no was like such a powerful thing to learn.
Yeah, yeah, it really is. Took
Yeah.
me a long time to learn how to do it.
Yeah, I'm not
Um,
really great at it, but I'm better.
with age, man.
Yeah.
Andy, I'm gonna have to walk up in like 1 minute and go get this little dude. If you want, I don't know what your evening is like. I could call you back at like 2:50 or 5:50 for you.
Sure. I mean,
Um,
that's
I'm
that's fine by me. I can just kind of pause the recording and I'll just leave this open
okay.
if that works for
Will
you.
it be the same Zoom link?
Yeah. Hmm.
Okay, great.
All
I'm
right.
gonna hop back on. I'm just gonna scoop him up, drop him off at the house, and then I'll get back on right then.
Sounds good.
I'm sorry about this
Oh, don't be
interruption, but I
sorry,
really
man. Like
appreciate it, and
I it's a parent thing. I get it.
I'm looking forward to talking in a few minutes.
Cool, cool.
Right on. Thanks, Andy. I'll talk to you
All right.
soon.
Sure.
Bye. Hey, Andy.
Hey, welcome back.
Hey, I'm so sorry about that, and I appreciate your patience, your
Yeah,
infinite patience.
no worries, man. I was actually just catching up, watching an old X-Files episode. I'm supposed not catching up.
I remember one of Granddaddy's biggest celebrity sightings ever was Gillian Anderson showing up at a show, not to see us, but when we were playing with Coldplay, and it was like, like we had some, I guess, famous-ish people around us before, like musicians who were into Granddaddy, but then um she was, I guess there had been a couple of actors, but at the time X-Files was so big, it was like, whoa, dude, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's so funny, like how like just these weird little moments. I actually interviewed someone for our other podcast called the Old Colony Cast. It's basically like a local history, true crime, points of interest, all things Plymouth. Um
Uh-huh.
and this new newspaper started up, news website called the Plymouth Independent, and it's like just local news the way it used to be is kind of like what they're doing. And so I got to interview the editor, and we're like just kind of like talking and shooting the shit. And then he at some point he had mentioned that he was a musician, and he's like, "Oh yeah, blah blah." He's like, "That's when I was touring with Ministry," and I'm like, "What?" He's like, "I was a keyboard player for Ministry," and I'm like,
Oh
just
wow.
flabbergasted. And I don't know what it is about Plymouth, but we have like this weird, like, I don't even say retired, but older musicians come to live here, or like
And
old.
how far is it, like north of Boston?
It's south of
Is that
Boston,
right?
about 45
South, okay.
minutes. It's kind of like
Okay.
almost on Cape Cod.
Hmm.
But like, yeah, we have this little British store downtown, and the woman who owns it used to be like the personal secretary for Led Zeppelin, and the lead singer from Striper lives in South Plymouth. It's just like one after the other. So I don't know what it is about this area, but yeah, it's like kind of these brushes with these, I don't know if famous is the right word. I don't like that word, but well known, I guess.
Yeah.
It's always weird. Did you ever, I mean, when you toured with Granddad and Modest Mouse, and did you have those moments that just felt surreal because people were acting to you that way?
I mean, there are certainly, like, starting in the early days of Granddaddy, or not early days maybe, but when we first started touring, that's a very bizarre thing to, I don't know, just to come face to face with. I mean, if I'm totally honest, when you're, or maybe at least when I was a kid, I think it's pretty common, like you kind of, you look forward to some moment when somebody's just going to recognize you at like a coffee shop or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I wouldn't want to characterize that as feeling bad, but there are definitely times where it's happening and you're like, oh, this feels, I don't know, like imbalanced somehow. That has happened. I mean, not that much. Like Jason from Granddaddy would get that more than any of us because he's the singer and the
Right.
architect of
The
that
front
band.
man. Yeah.
And then Isaac, Isaac is a very, I mean, they both are, Jason and Isaac are both very revered figures, but Isaac, I guess in some way is, I don't know how else to say it, like a little more public.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so there's like, I've definitely, maybe not every time, but a lot of the time when I'm out with Isaac, or when I was out with Isaac, just like wherever, like he gets recognized. He's kind of a public figure. The other side of that is like when people who, you revere yourself start to get into what you're doing, that is a very bizarre thing. And like it's been remarked upon innumerably, but David Bowie was a really big Granddaddy fan.
Oh my God.
And
That how flattering
but
is that? I don't know if I could
it was
handle that.
tremendously flattering. But also, man, the thing is, in that specific instance, I guess at the time, I don't know exactly. He probably would have been in his late 50s or something like that when
Hmm.
but he would like talk about us in interviews all the time. He's like, Granddaddy is the band, or whatever, something like that. And we had heard about that, but then when he showed up at a show for the first time, we met him a couple of times, and like really talked to him, like I don't want to say as a peer, but I don't know a better word for it. So let's just say that, even though I don't really feel that way. But anyway, um, he knew all of our names before he met us. Um, and he was in possession of such a grace and such an elegance that, you know, it's definitely like, wow, like that's where you want to go. You know what I mean? Like, obviously that dude has every reason in the world to be whatever you might think of as a celebrity, right? Like kind of arrogant, kind of cocky.
Yeah.
He was confident, and again, I don't know him at all, but like he seemed to possess a confidence. But it was just he was very like gentle and graceful, and it was just like, oh shit, like this dude, he did it. He went all the way through with it, and he's seems like a wonderful human being. You know what I mean? Who's just curious about music still.
Yeah, and
um,
it's just the idea that that can actually happen, and not they get to some point and become jaded or just entitled that they can still kind of be that
yeah, I
normal
mean,
for
my
lack of a better term.
understanding, totally. Yeah, I mean, my understanding is like, he lived. I think it's like at I don't know, it's like at Lafayette and Houston or something like that. But anyway, like sort of downtown New York. Lived there forever with Iman. And my understanding was that he was just kind of out and about, like he was at shows and whatever, just like he was maybe at the Stone, at John Zorn's club, or at Bowery or what. He was just like
Hmm.
he was just a dude who liked music, who
Yeah.
also happened to have made you know 10 of the 50 best songs ever made. you know
Oh yeah, yeah. And it's funny,
so
like
like
around here we have Aerosmith sightings because Joe Perry and Steven Tyler live maybe 15 minutes north of Plymouth. So like, there's always photos of people, oh, I ran into Steven Tyler at the grocery store and that kind of thing. And everybody says they're just like the nicest, most approachable. They'll stop and take a selfie. And to me, it's just like I can't imagine what that's like when people want to stop you multiple times in a day to just be like, "Hey, can I get a photo with you?" And just, I mean, yeah, it's got to be a weird experience.
there's a friend who I didn't have his phone number, who is a very recognizable person, and he's like, oh, take down my number, text me and we'll get coffee or whatever. And we were in a public place. This was kind of recently. And he's like, so it's blah 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 blah, blah. And I was like, hey, let me just put it in my phone, because there was like a group of people, and I was just like, they might just be listening to his phone number. And so but he was just like, it's just part of it, it's fine.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
he did like manually input the number, but he wasn't that tripping out. And then he just got stopped 15 more times the next 20 feet to you know do whatever, take selfies or sign autographs or whatever.
yeah. Like I don't. That's a lifestyle I don't know if I would ever want to achieve. But
No, I definitely I don't want anything to do with that.
yeah, yeah, and especially I mean, with a young son, like you see some of these celebrity kids, and you're just like, oh, that clearly had an effect on them growing up.
Totally. Yep,
Yeah.
that's right. So
So what do you have next in line for the? Did you say there was? I'm sorry if I am forgetting this. Did you say there was one more EP that you were working on?
there's two albums that I want to make next year.
Yeah.
I think I want them to be I mean, I guess they kind of become what they become, but the way that I'm thinking about them right now is that I want them to become albums.
Hmm.
And one would be kind of more of a summer release, just because of the imaginary movie is a kind of uh the darker summer movie, and then the other one is a winter movie. So I would want one of them to come out like June, July, and then another one to come out in December.
Christmas movie.
It's I mean it's Christmas adjacent. Yeah, it's
Oh, okay.
like yeah. Christmas adjacent. There we go.
Um, is do you have you mentioned Ang Lee several times? Is he your favorite director? Is there someone else that like really connect you can connect with like in their movies?
Jeez,
And
I don't know that.
I asked this because I literally was having this conversation just the other day.
I mean, I don't know that I have a favorite director. I mean, like when um I love a lot of Scorsese's movies. I mean, um Spike Lee's movies can be really fantastic. Like Ang Lee has made some incredible movies, Crouching, like also the range from like something like Crouching Tiger to Ice Storm is
Hmm.
pretty crazy. Um which is maybe part of the magic of movies too, right? It's just like, and I wish music was somehow a little more like that, where
It's totally not because I mean that was kind of I think what surprised me about um your Small Isles work is how different it is from your previous stuff, and it fans can be very unforgiving when people want to kind of do something new.
yeah, it's a challenging thing, and I think it's something I know that it's something that everybody wrestles with. I mean, back to like the Bowie example, he's a person who sort of continued to defy expectations. I think because he baked that in from the beginning,
Hmm.
right? Like, is he a balladeer? Is he like a glam rocker? Is he an arena rocker? Like it's he was all over the place, so I think people expected that. I also think that Isaac, maybe deliberately, I don't know, we've never actually talked about this, but from Modest Mouse, like, he's got his like pretty big actual hits, and but then he also has like the kind of sleepier, like wild packs of family dogs, or like the big epics like Stars or Projectors or something like that. And his or their fans, Modest Mouse's fans, have allowed him to do all that stuff, but
Hmm.
it's rare. And um but I do want Small Isles to be that. And there were a couple of deliberate steps on this new EP to like, I don't know, to turn the prism to the other side a little bit or something, um, so that hopefully we can kind of demonstrate earlier than later that the objectives for this thing are just to, I don't know, I just want to make interesting music that interesting if it interests me, right? Because I'm still a music fan. I still every Thursday night at 9 or 9 p.m. I just fucking devour as much as I can, and some of
Is
it
that just
sticks
your
and some of it.
designated time where you're like, leave me alone, I'm listening kind of thing?
No, it's like it's right after our son has gone to bed and I've kind
Yeah.
of gotten my rituals out of the way, and that's, so it's 12 Eastern is when everything drops on the DSPs, and I
Oh,
just
I
go
got
on.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, so I just go on and like, get based on recommendations, based on what is recommended to me, um, by the algorithm, all the stuff, but I just get as much of it as I can. My point in saying that is like I am still the same person that I was as like a 12-year-old, as a 15-year-old, as a 20-year-old who's just like, I want to know what's happening out there.
Yeah, I was very much I always read like I don't know. My business partner calls me a music snob, as where like once something becomes popular, like I don't really listen to it anymore. And I think
Mm-hmm.
it's more at that point it's just overplayed and I'm kind of tired of it. But I used to, read all the metal magazines and music magazines, and I read the interviews with kind of the bigger people, and focus on the parts where they were talking about what they were listening to and try to find new music that way. Because I always found that really a great, the one that jumps to mind. I think it was an Axl Rose interview, and he dropped like he was listening to Soundgarden, Faith No More, and someone else, and I went and looked all those bands
Hmm.
up, and I'm like, these are all great. And then like 8 months later, everybody's knows Soundgarden, and yeah. So I was always someone who actively likes to go out and find new music, and it's one of my favorite things.
Yeah, I mean, I still do. I love knowing that, we're still out there doing that. Um, I mean, it's harder for me to find favorites now, probably, but like in the last number of years, I've in the last say decade, I've certainly gotten some new favorite artists.
What are
So,
you listening to that you would recommend?
um, I mean, I listen to, honestly, mostly what I listen to in the like when I'm listening to music, is scores and hip hop. So, um, the I'm still listening to the latest Kendrick Lamar record.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he remains a favorite. I liked that last Deaf Heaven record a lot. I know that they some people didn't like that as much. That's a couple years old now. Um, there was a Tyler the Creator record that came out like an extension of what do they call it? I don't know, like the expanded edition or something of um the record that he put out like a year ago. I just discovered this composer who I had never heard before called Laura Karpman, who did the Miss Marvel score, and I have
Yeah.
been fucking blown away by um some of the stuff that she has done. Like I've been really taken with that. You see, I'm flipping through. I always pay attention to the stuff that Jeff Russo does. He just put out the um season five. I haven't even seen season five yet, but season five score of Fargo. Um,
Okay. Yeah.
so I'm trying to think. I'm looking through my.
I never watched that. Tons of people told me I should. I just,
It's pretty great, dude.
yeah.
It's special. Um, and then lately, because my kid, recently he said he's really into Ninjago. He's super into Legos. It's like
Yeah.
all he does is plays Legos. So very into Ninjago, and we listen to a lot of Ninjago. It's basically all the variations on this theme song called "The Weekend Whip," but it's like in different styles. And um, so one of the styles is like I'm like this is basically Green Day, and
Oh,
he's like, "What's
interesting. Yeah.
Green Day?" So we've been listening to a little bit of Green Day, which he does not like as much as he likes the Ninjago stuff.
Of course.
Um, and
Green Day
then
doesn't have Legos,
uh,
so
right,
yeah.
I think he'll get there though. It's more of like that 2000s Green Day. But in any case, then he also recently said he's like, well, I don't like hip hop because hip hop's not catchy. So um,
Okay.
Natasha and I were like, well, I don't know about that, dude. Like, just look at Jay-Z's like biggest hits, like so kind of went through and that's what he's been listening to like in the shower lately is like which is a big music listening time in our house for whatever reason.
Oh, for
But
sure. Yeah. No,
um
I 100%.
so he's been like it's like all that stuff like H to the Izzo, Dirt Off Your Shoulder, Money Ain't a Thing, Hard Knock Life, uh New York State of Mind. Like we've been kind of Jay-Z's big radio hits have been,
Hmm.
which is not new music, but that's if
No,
I'm
but
totally being honest, I know that sometimes people want to get more esoteric, but his big radio hits have been like ubiquitous in our house for the last couple of months because that's what he
it's
wants to listen
really,
to.
yeah, it's really fun to kind of like re-experience music with your kids. You
Oh,
know,
dude, yeah.
I love it. I remember there was one day where I think it was my son. I think it was my son who's like, "Oh man, I just found this band. He's like, you should totally check it out. I'm like, oh yeah, who is it? And he's like, Tool. And I'm like, yeah, I know Tool. And they just to see them excited about the stuff that like I was excited about when I was their age, or they, now them being adults will be like, oh, you should check out this band. And sometimes it's good, and sometimes I'm like, wow, that's not music intended for me because I did not enjoy it. But yeah,
Right.
it's
Yeah.
it's so it's so fun to kind of like shit. It's all media. Like I love sharing movies with my kids, and just kind of having them experience what I experienced as they grew up, and vice versa. They'll be like, my son turned me on to What We Do in the Shadows, which is amazing.
Oh
And
wow.
and he's like, you need to check
I
this
mean, they're
out.
lucky they have a cool dad, dude. That's a big gift, honestly.
They don't think I'm cool. So
Well, there's that meme that's going around that's like, it's Tom Araya at the Grammys with his wife and two maybe daughters. I don't know. They look like they're. This was probably like 5 years ago or something, but they look like they're. Last year, Slayer probably went to the Grammys, but the daughters look like they're say 15 and 17 or something like that, and they're looking at Tom Araya like, oh God, it's like, dude, your dad is fucking the singer of Slayer. Like,
yeah. Um
that is the raddest place you could ever be, and they think he's a fucking dork.
yeah. Yeah. Oh man, I'm gonna blank on his name. He's a like well-known character actor. He's one of those guys who's in everything. He was in Twister and
Bill
um
Paxton.
no, kind of like one of the supporting people.
Okay.
And I'm totally blanking on his name, but I got to interview him, and he'd do like spots on Frasier, and he was on Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and
Mm-hmm.
his kid was watching Always Sunny, and he was doing the dishes. He just heard from the other room, "Ugh, that's right, you're in this." And I'm like, "Oh, that's so great," because it's that
Wow,
like
dude.
just sucked them right out of like being into the thing. We're like, "Ugh, that's my dad." Um, oh yeah, I'm blanking on
I
his name.
love that.
Yeah, it was great. One of my favorite stories, I think, that came from an interview, just because it was so grounding. Of like, it doesn't matter who you are, your kids don't care. Like they're you're just mom or dad or whatever. They're like, fine, you know.
Yeah, man. I
Yeah.
mean, well, like, uh, there's a video. I mean, this was well before he could have had any, uh, recognition of what I did for a living.
Hmm.
Um, like he was probably, I think it was right before his first birthday, but we were playing a festival, and I start playing Float On, which is, I mean, I didn't have anything to do with writing that song, but it's Modest Mouse's. It's a massive hit. Like
Yep.
everyone knows that song. And he's just strapped to my wife's chest and he's fucking sleeping.
Yeah.
He's just, like, he couldn't. I mean, he was one, but it'd probably be the same now. Like if I was up there playing Float On, he would just be like, I don't give a shit.
Yeah. Like I don't
I
care.
mean, he does like Granddaddy's biggest song, or one of our biggest songs, The Crystal Lake. He really likes that song. But recently because I'll like, when I'm working on cues for shows or whatever, like I sometimes, he usually gets to be the DJ in the car, but there's times where it's like, I got to check this mix, dude. So we're gonna listen to Dad's music
Yeah.
for the next 20 minutes or whatever, and he's like, I go, what do you think of this? He's like, I mean, I guess it's good. It's just sounds.
But they'll just destroy you. I love that. Like I always tell, like I have friends and whatever, and they'll be like, "Oh, you're famous." I'm like, "I'm not famous. I'm famous on two streets in Plymouth. That's it." Because I work with so many businesses downtown that I've just gotten to know everyone who works in them, everyone who owns them, blah blah blah. And we are having lunch, and it was like post COVID, so there's all like the outdoor eating. And I'm sitting there with
Mm-hmm.
my kids, and my youngest looks at me and goes, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, why?" And they're like, "No one said hi to you in 5 minutes. I'm just worried you're not okay." And I'm like, "Wow, okay."
Oh
Thanks a lot,
wow.
man. Yeah. It just they'll just humble you in a second.
Yeah,
Yeah. That's
yeah,
great.
totally. Yeah, and
Um,
also like for me, like Ozzy just hasn't been, because the last shows that I played with Modest Mouse were late 2019, which he was actually at the Forum. He played drums on stage at the Forum, but I don't know, like I think he definitely fell asleep during that show. Like he's in the front row at the Forum.
Yeah.
But also like it I think that's the other side of that is like it on some like very almost mitochondrial level, like he just doesn't give a shit because
Yeah.
like he played drums at the Forum when he was 2,
Right.
he remembers it. And like he's the couple of like, celebrities that we know or whatever
Mm-hmm.
are just kind of like his friends' dads.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like he just it's just like he's not even looking at it through the lens of like popular culture, and he's just like, and I also think that's great because when that comes into focus, it's just gonna be like, oh, that's a dude who's probably somebody's dad too,
Yeah.
like, or
Like
whatever.
they're just a normal person when they're not doing whatever they're doing. Yeah.
Exactly, man.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I love that. Well, Jim, I want to say thank you for being a normal guy. um, where can
Andy,
people
thank you so
go?
much for all your patience,
Well,
man.
yeah, no problem. But before we go, where can people go to get the album? Is it available on
I mean,
vinyl and all the
it's not on vinyl
PR
yet.
stuff?
The first one is available on vinyl through akprecordings.com, which is the first, wonderful label, division of Dangerbird. So the first one is available on vinyl. And then, this one is out on Modern Recordings BMG. It's out digitally. Let's all clamor about it, and eventually it'll be available on vinyl, and hopefully we'll play some shows next year.
Awesome. Yeah, so it's available now, so people can go check it out. And Jim, again, thank you so much. Merry Christmas.
Andy, thank you very
Yeah,
much, man. Merry Christmas to you. Happy holidays. Happy New Year. And I
thank you.
wish you all the best in 2024, man.
Yeah, awesome. And yeah, let us know. Feel free to reach out when the next album comes out. We'll come back and talk more.
All right, man. Thank you. I
Cool.
appreciate it.
You
Be
have a good
well.
one. All right.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye.
And thanks for checking out the show today, listeners. If you enjoyed the content today, you can go over to patreon.com/Inebri-art to support the show. You can join over there for just a few dollars a month and help us provide this fun content that you just checked out. You can also email us at Inebri-art.com with your questions, complaints, and concerns, or you can find us on all social medias at Inebri-art or at Inebri-art6 on Instagram. And also don't forget to check out our other shows, Bar Talk Podcast, Old Colony Cast, Inebri-art, and all the other shows on the Inebri-art Network, which you can find at Inebri-art.com. Thanks again for listening.